But we're going to start tonight with a remarkable story that is still developing right now, and I expect it may continue to develop overnight. It's a story of one state's Republican governor apparently just having a meltdown in public and, in one case, on somebody's voicemail. And this story has been building up for a couple of days now, but honestly, today it just exploded. And I will warn you that what we are about to play you here contains some vile language on the part of the governor.
I would like to talk to you about your comments about my being a racist, you sucker. And I want to talk to you. I want you to prove that I'm a racist. I've spent my life helping black people, and you little son of a bitch, socialist sucker, I need you to, I want you to record this and make it public because I am after you. Thank you.
Thank you. It's always polite when you're calling somebody that to make sure you tidy things up with a polite. My mother always says, whenever I'm calling somebody, I should. It may be that you recognize the voice there, or that you've seen some headlines about this today. You may know that this is Maine Governor Paul LePage, who left that voicemail for a Maine state lawmaker. But if you want to know beyond that where this came from, let's just do this chronologically for a second, just to appreciate what's going on here. This is by no means an exhaustive catalog of Governor Paul LePage and his controversies and fights and even his public swearing. That would take way too long. But in order to understand what's going on here, I think the easiest place to see this starting is here.
Guys that are named D-Money, Smoothie, Shifty, these type of guys, they come from Connecticut, New York. They come up here, they sell their heroin, then they go back home. Incidentally, half the time they impregnate a young white girl before they leave.
Governor Paul LePage speaking at a Maine town hall in January. Those comments led to some nationwide headlines about these racially charged remarks from the governor. And so the next day, Governor LePage called a press conference to offer this non-apology apology.
Instead of saying Maine women, I said white women. If you go, and I'm not going to apologize to the Maine women for that, because if you go to Maine, you will see that we're essentially 95% white. If you want to make it racist, go right ahead, do whatever you want. I never said anything about white or black on traffickers. What are they, black? I don't know who they are. I just read the names.
Paul LePage insisting that he did not mean to imply that D-Money, Smoothie, and Shifty had any particular racial specificity. That explanation did not last long, though. The governor soon clarified that, yes, in fact, he was talking about black guys named D-Money, Smoothie, and Shifty.
I had to go screaming from top of my lungs about black dealers coming in and doing the things that they're doing to our state.
At the top of his lungs, he had to go screaming about the black dealers impregnating the white girls of Maine. That was how Maine Governor Paul LePage kicked off this year, 2016. And this current crisis that he finds himself in now, which tonight is leading to pretty widespread calls for his resignation. It's actually led to some public calls that he should get psychological help. This crisis that he's in tonight comes from this same issue area. Paul LePage once again going on a tear about how dangerous basically how dangerous he finds black people on the basis of their race. This Wednesday at a town hall in the town of North Berwick, Maine, Governor LePage informed the audience that, quote, "I've been collecting every single drug dealer who has been arrested in our state. I will tell you that 90+% of those pictures in my book, and it's a 3-ringed binder, are black and Hispanic people." It's Paul LePage this week announcing that he has a binder that he's collecting, a binder full of black and Hispanic people. And ever since he revealed the existence of this binder and started talking about its racial composition, a lot of people have expressed interest in seeing that binder. We are one of, I'm sure, many other news outlets that have now put in a request to see Paul LePage's secret race binder that explains all crime in Maine. So the governor volunteered that information this week, even though the governor clearly started this. The pressure that has resulted from the news coverage of that pronouncement from him, it does seem to be getting to him.
let me tell you something. Black people come up the highway and they kill Mainers. You ought to look into that.
Governor, we're not trying to get into a battle. We just want to see the
bunch of people. You make me so sick.
It's him talking to State House reporters who were questioning him about his remarks. That was yesterday. And since then, it has been Katie bar the door. It's been a series of almost unbelievable outbursts. Not just, one and then I'm sorry, or even one and I'm not sorry, but one thing and then another thing and another thing and another thing from this governor who really does appear to be melting down. Again, to give it to you chronologically, yesterday morning, Governor Paul LePage yells at those reporters who were asking him about his 3-ring binder comments from the town hall earlier this week. Then he storms off after that. And that's when he called this state legislator who he had heard described him as racist. And that's when he left this expletive-laced voicemail for him that we just played a moment ago. Then after that, Paul LePage decided he wasn't done talking about this, and he called reporters into his office for a follow-up discussion where he volunteered that he would actually like to kill that legislator.
I wish it was 1825 and we'd have a duel. That's how angry I am. And I wouldn't put my gun in the air, guarantee you. I would not be Hamilton. I'd point it right between his eyes.
During that, again, the governor called this meeting with reporters because he wanted to get this off his chest. So he tells them he wants to kill this legislator. Wishes he could just take a gun, point it right between his eyes, and kill him. And during that same discussion with reporters, Governor Page volunteered to reporters that he had left this legislator a voicemail message. And at that point, nobody other than the legislator knew it. But he's talking to reporters about it. The reporters decide they'd like to hear it. The governor told them it exists. The Portland Press-Herald filed a Freedom of Access Act request to get the phone message. They got the phone message. They posted it online last night. And so then everybody got to hear it. And again, I need to warn you that this recording contains the governor's vile language.
This is Governor Paul Richard LePage. I would like to talk to you about your comments about my being a racist, you sucker. And I want to talk to you. I want you to prove that I'm a racist. I've spent my life helping black people, and you little son of a bitch, socialist sucker, I need you to, I want you to record this and make it public because I am after you. Thank you.
So that was last night that was made public. For the record, the legislator who Paul LePage is so angry with this and is swearing at in this voicemail says that he never called Governor LePage racist. He says that he said that Governor LePage's racially charged comments on the drug problem in Maine were not helpful toward finding a real solution to the problem. That is what caused this response from the governor. Today, Paul LePage went back to the press and decided to keep talking about this. He explained to reporters today that he's not apologizing for anything he's done or said. He wants you to know who the people of Maine should think of as the enemy at this point. Like in a war, the people you shoot, he wants to be very clear about that.
When you go to war, if you know the enemy dresses in red and you dress in blue, you shoot at red, don't you? Ken, you've been in uniform. You shoot at the enemy. You try to identify the enemy. And the enemy right now, the overwhelming majority of people coming in are people of color or people of Hispanic origin.
So we know who the enemy is, right? You can see them by their color. In the midst of all this, the state of Maine sort of reeling to the point where the Portland Press-Herald has now written an editorial that does not address the governor. It actually is an editorial addressed to the United States of America, apologizing to the rest of the country for Paul LePage, apologizing for electing and then re-electing, quote, a governor who is unfit for high office. Now, in the midst of what is going on in Maine, I think less noticed is the fact that Paul LePage did actually offer to resign as governor in his most recent tirade to the press this afternoon. It was a conditional offer to resign, but he did make an offer.
The fact of the matter is, I will resign if Gattini resigns. Everybody wants me to resign. How about them? How about the corrupt people in this building? Gattine's not enough. Come to think of it, I'll give you a list. If they all resign and offer never to run again, I will resign.
First of all, this one legislator who he screamed at, if that guy resigns, then Paul LePage will resign. No, come to think of it, that's not enough. He's going to come up with a list of all the other people who have to resign, and then he'll... It does seem like a lot of people in Maine do want Paul LePage to resign right now. I mean, I don't have any idea whether all these Democratic legislators who will presumably be on his list, whether they might want to sacrifice themselves in order for him to go. It does seem like an open question. You know, in the middle of one of his earlier controversies, Governor LePage previously said that he would resign as governor if enough regular people in Maine wrote to him and asked him to resign. You might remember we filed a Freedom of Access Act request for those letters to Paul LePage, asking him how many letters he got. When he said he would resign if he got enough letters, we actually found that the people of Maine were very enthusiastic about asking him to resign. There were tons and tons and tons of these letters. So I think if he got that many letters and he still didn't resign, I think there's no reason to take him at his word that he will go, even if these Democratic legislators go. But Democratic legislators are now explicitly asking him to quit. They're calling for him to resign the governorship, and they're also calling for him to get some help.
It is time for a political intervention with Governor LePage. And a political intervention means that our sensible and thoughtful Republican friends come together with us to do one of two things: to either make sure that Governor LePage gets the help that he needs, because this kind of behavior is not normal behavior. It is not just not what we expect of our chief executive or governor. It's also not what we expect of any human being who is functioning normally in society. So we expect them to come together with us to either get him the help that he needs or to remove him from office.
Democratic System Majority Leader there asking for Republicans to join with Democrats, not just in, I guess, calling the governor out for what he's doing, but specifically saying that they want Governor LePage to get the help that he needs. And if he can't get the help that he needs, that they need to get him out of office, either by encouraging him to quit or by removing him from office. Joining us now is Bill Nemetz. He's a columnist with the Portland Press-Herald, which has been right at the tip of the spear for this whole story. Bill, it's really nice to see you. Thanks for being with us tonight.
You too, Rachel. And could I just say for the record that dueling with pistols is no longer a thing up in Maine?
It is. Even if you're a history
We don't
buff.
do that anymore.
Yeah, even if you think it's neat. The governor sort of did go back to the dueling comments, right? And he said, I recognize that it's not legal now, but it doesn't mean I don't want to do it.
That's right. That's right. Apparently, it was just a fantasy, a passing fantasy.
Wow. Let me ask you, Bill, if I've first of all, in summarizing that way, I mean, I know there's other things that you could bring into the discussion, and there's more context, and there's more things that Paul LePage has done and said. But is that basically the character of this political crisis that Maine is in right now, with people worrying not just that Paul LePage might not be comporting himself well as governor, but that he might be having some kind of a breakdown?
Well, many people are wondering about that because, as we all know, you've had it on your show many times, there's a long litany of transgressions that he's committed over his almost 6 years in office now. This one stands out, and this one really seems to have awakened people out of what I call kind of a self-defensive slumber. I mean, a lot of people have looked away a lot in recent months and years because to go crazy over every single thing he says is really just to go crazy. And people have tried to ignore him, but this one stands out for some reason. I think it's the utter profanity of it, the fact that people for once can hear him unfiltered on that voicemail. We at the Press-Herald decided to run that without the bleeps, so people can hear exactly what it is he said, at his suggestion, I might add. And I would note that not only people can hear that, but I'm sure a lot of their kids with their cell phones are listening to it too. So for the first time ever, I think a lot of people are getting a thoroughly unvarnished look and listen at what this guy is all about. And you got to look long and hard in Maine right now to find people who aren't completely horrified.
I think part of the reason that this resonates as a national story right now more than it might at some other time is because of concerns about racism and even like white supremacy and white nationalism is really dark stuff that's bubbling to the surface in the context of the national presidential campaign and the Trump campaign in particular. Governor LePage is a Trump supporter. His daughter is running state coalitions in Maine for the Trump campaign that was just announced recently. He's described himself as being sort of Trump before Trump was Trump. When he's making these points that he's making about race, when he's pressing this case that the problem in Maine is black men and Hispanic men preying on white women. Is he trying to get something done? Is there a piece of policy that he's trying to get? Is there something that he wants done differently in terms of law enforcement? Or is this just trying to get people upset along racial lines?
Well, he would argue that he's trying to stem the flow of heroin and other hard drugs into Maine, and as he repeatedly puts it, save Maine lives. And at the very core of this, that could very well be. What nobody seems to be able to get their head around is this fixation on race. I mean, yes, Maine, like many other states, has a real problem with this inflow of drugs into our state. And there's unanimity on that we need to do something about it. What people can't figure out is why, whenever he raises this problem, he has to overlay this issue of race onto it, rather than just address the fact that we have to stop the drugs. So it's very difficult to get inside this guy's head. But a lot of people right now are trying to figure out why he has this obsession with the color of their skin and why that should matter. You know, why not just deal with the drug issue and join hands, as we all want to do, and attack that problem and leave the race issue aside. He's running very much in sync with the Trump campaign right now, and I think that's why a lot of people are very much up in arms about it and want it to stop and are tired of hearing about it.
Bill Nemitz, a columnist with the Portland Press-Herald. Again, the Press-Herald and also you as a columnist have been right on top of this, Bill. Thanks for being with us tonight. I know it wasn't the easiest thing to get on the air tonight to get you to that studio, so thanks for doing it. I appreciate it.
Pleasure, Rachel. Good talking to you.
I will tell you